even thinking to other series that Joss Whedon has done, I'm liking it more how things aren't spelled out as much. So,
Okay.
So
All right.
for me, no, that's fine. Keep doing it. Shut up. Don't listen to him.
Ah! Hey, Internet. It's Paul. It's Matt. The Dork Lords. We are here talking about the new show, The Nevers. Episodes 1 through 3. We're catching up here a little bit. So we'll do a little bit of different style of a recap since we're talking about 3 episodes in one. We'll give you an introduction to the show and the characters and kind of set us up for episode 4. One thing to know is the season 1 has been split into 2 parts. So part 1 is 6 episodes long. Hence, we're halfway through it. And then part 2 will be at a later date, and they'll have 6 more episodes. I think the reason for this is because Joss Whedon, the main force behind episodes 1 through 6, stepped away from the project, and so they got a new showrunner, I assume, and then that's going to be the next part of that. And we can surmise why he stepped away. Joss Whedon has had some issues lately with accusations from numerous actors of workplace harassment. He described stepping away from the Nevers as a result of a year of unprecedented challenges. Mm-hmm. So, we can assume that's not just a pandemic. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I didn't think we can assume that Jane Espenson is the current showrunner. In all the sort of after episode talks about the show, it's been Jane, and we haven't even seen Joss Whedon. Yeah, and she's worked with him for a long time. She worked on Buffy and been on several of their shows. She worked on Game of Thrones. Ooh, and Battlestar Galactica. Yeah, so she gets around.
And that's her HBO contact, because this is on HBO, so it's got a big budget, and it shows. This show it's not an adaptation, so we're not basing it on a book or anything like that. It is set in Victorian London, like an alternate version of Victorian London, and there was this big supernatural event that occurred 3 years earlier. Most people don't remember the actual event, which was this big sailing ship that flew over and spored everybody in London. But a few people do. One of them is Malady, who we'll talk about later. But all people know is that on this particular day, suddenly, a whole bunch of folks, mostly women, got powers, various powers. And so that became this thing of, they're like an enemy, they're the other. And we see then this idea of the class structure that was already in Victorian London as stratified with an extra layer of people with powers and people without. This is kind of reminiscent to me a little bit of Carnival Row, which we talked about on Dork Lords. That show was also a Victorian, alternate version of Victorian England, and he had people with powers, like magical people versus non-magical people. Sure. And in fact, even one of the characters, much like one of the characters here, invents electricity. That said, Paul, as we launch into this thing, what are your first thoughts here, episodes 1 through 3 of The Nevers?
I like the show. I like the characters and the premise. In the ways that I prefer it to Carnival Row is that all the supernatural things aren't, they're a little less nature bound.
Right, I'm not a faun, or I got you.
Yeah. So I like that. It makes certainly the things that afflict everyone more interesting. And I think it's doing a good job of giving our characters complex desires and backstories and all that. As an example, Frank Mundy, Ben Chaplin's character, I didn't
the inspector.
Yes, the inspector. I didn't immediately think that he was gay.
Right. So we know his backstory is he was left at the altar by one of the touched, Mary Brighton.
Right.
And then we also find out that he had an intimate relationship with this guy, Hugo Swan, who we'll talk about later as well. And so, yeah, I got you. Each of these folks seems to have a complex background. Absolutely true. Speaking of true, the main character, I would say, driving this is Amalia True. She runs this orphanage for, I guess called an orphanage. I'm not sure if it's technically an orphanage, but it's people that are touched can come and stay with them. I like the bit at one point where they're like, see, they can come here and be safe. And she's like, well, not really. Nah, not really safe. Yeah. But they're not alone.
She certainly seems to be the core, her and Penance Adair.
Right.
Who is the inventor you were talking about.
Right. Yeah, so their power, Penance's power seems to be invention. She has an electric car, for instance,
yes.
In an age of carriages. And then Amalia
That doesn't seem too fast, if you ask me. But maybe
it doesn't,
for safety
but it is
reasons.
a car. It doesn't.
Yes,
it's not horse-powered.
Yes.
And people seem to kind of accept it. Like, that's one of the things about this world is while everybody, the people without powers are suspicious of the people with powers, their jaw doesn't necessarily drop. Like, oh my God, there's a car going down the street. Right. Like, oh, that was probably one of the touched.
One of the things that brings to mind to me is the adage about advances that are rather dramatic. They can seem like magic to the people who don't know about what's going on. And so at the time when these technological advancements were happening, you have this other aspect of it, which is suffrage and also people trying to improve their lot in life. So,
right. Plus, you had things like just some horrendous working conditions and such in Victorian England,
yes.
Very much a class struggle going on.
Yeah. And one of the things that's interesting to me about Amalia True is how much other characters are trying to make us suspicious about her her motivations. I feel like if people weren't saying it, I wouldn't be so suspicious.
Right. The idea, I think what people seem to be suggesting in the show is that she knows more than she's telling. Like, oh, she's got this end game. She's trying to prepare an army, or she's doing something, and she knows there's an end game, and she's not telling everybody. We don't know that for a fact. Her power set seems to be varied. I'll say that. It's like her main power is she can see the future. Involuntarily, but she can see glimpses of a future.
Yeah, I guess
if
she was some crazy ninja before this thing happened, we don't know that.
Right, she's very good at fighting, hand to hand. She also can breathe underwater.
Can she?
Maybe it's just that she has increased lung capacity. I don't know. Maybe not. It occurred to me that was, if you remember, at the end of episode 1, we see a montage of when these people got their powers. And for her, she was committing suicide by jumping into the water. And she's in the water when this thing hit her and gave her powers. And then it somehow woke her up that she was no longer suicidal, I guess, as well, right? Because she could have just been like, hey, I have powers. Well, I'm still going to die. She swims back to the surface. But I'm just wondering if maybe the fact that she was underwater at that time maybe gives her more of an ability underwater. It just seemed like she was under for quite a while, that's all. Her motives seem unclear, but you're right. It's only from the people talking about her. From her point of view, we don't get her as like,
I wonder if that's a clumsy way, because I don't feel like watching what she does, we've been given, the audience, the idea that we should distrust her. Like for instance, Penance certainly is the one who would probably feel the most betrayed.
They seem to have a chemistry. I'm wondering if they're going to ship those two at some point here. But
they could, but one thing we didn't see until the third episode, something that we may have suspected, which is a previous relationship between her and the doctor.
Right.
So they've kind of
Dr.
set up.
Cousins.
I guess they had that option, but we'll see.
Dr. Cousins has the power to heal people kind of with his touch, essentially.
Yeah. But not his touch alone.
Right, right.
He also is a doctor, so he prescribes things as well.
Something else we learn, so Malady is the villain at the moment, although I think the big bad is actually somebody else. But
well, Lord Mason certainly is not somebody that's is a good person.
True, but he to me he seems like from WandaVision, the army, the military
that guy. Well,
that's kind of his. He was a bad guy too, but not the bad guy, right?
Yeah.
He's like, I'm an obstacle.
I would suggest too that. I mean, that's an unfortunate comparison because he was kind of a boob. I mean, if you look at in WandaVision there. And we don't really know their benefactor, Lavinia Bidlow.
That's the one.
To what extent
that's who I'm throwing the dart out. She's the big bad of the series.
Okay.
And I don't necessarily know why. I mean, what we see, the reasons you can determine that Lavinia is bad is that while she's helping to fund this orphanage for Amalia True, she's also funding a fake orphanage for this doctor to do experiments and lobotomize the touched, and it's in connection to this artifact.
Yeah, excavate the artifact that is apparently related to the turning or whatever.
So you want an early theory?
Oh, sure, why not?
Here's my early theory.
And what,
I'm not betting any
what confectionery will you stake it on?
Peeps. No, okay. I'm done for a little while. I'm betting candy when I don't really know that this is probably wrong. So okay.
Yeah.
I'm not.
If you have any suggestions, put them in the comments.
That's right. Okay. So, one of the things we see in the show so far, we've been introduced to like these alien-looking people. Like there's these guys that when they pull their mask off, they've got like their face has a blue fire to it. I mean, they don't look human. You know what I'm talking about?
I mean, I know what you're talking about. I mean, they're clearly the result of that. He's performed experiments and now they're his slaves.
Okay. So you're with me on this. I think those are the result of this Dr. Haig experimenting on the touched in connection with this artifact. And his benefactor is Lavinia, who shows up to make sure everything's going all right. So she's quite aware of what's happening.
Sure.
I think this just a shot in the dark, but one of the notable things about Lavinia is she's in a wheelchair. We don't necessarily know why she's in a wheelchair, but maybe she's also very wealthy, incredibly wealthy, and she's got her brother is one of the touched. Her brother can see through birds and stuff.
Yes, unbeknownst to her.
Maybe, probably, but maybe not. I don't know. I'm just saying maybe her motivation is she's in the elite. She's used to having everything, but she's confined to this wheelchair. She has some kind of physical malady,
right?
And when this event happened, and suddenly all these people around her got these cool powers, she's still in a wheelchair, and maybe it's this thought of like, hey, if I could recreate this, I want to get mine. Like, I want this ability, and it's unfair that me, who's theoretically, I should have everything, I had to be stuck in this wheelchair. I don't know. Anyway, that's just my thought, that maybe that's the driving point. Like, hey, you know what? I get what I want, so I'm just going to make this happen again, and then I'll get a power.
I see.
That's my thought. Anyway. So there you go. That's my.
All right. I guess we're 3 episodes in, so maybe you feel you need to come up with a theory.
I'm just trying to see.
We're halfway into the season, so
trying to pick an arc here. That's all. One of the other things that gets dropped quickly. In fact, let's face it, a lot of stuff gets dropped quickly in the show. We'll talk about that in a second. But is we know that Amalia and Malady have a past.
Yes.
They were friends in some way. We don't know, but Malady feels like she got betrayed by Amalia at some point.
Yeah.
In fact, Amalia and Malady, the verbiage is kind of similar. Just to say they have a connection. Our hero and our villain knew each other in the past.
Yeah, and I'm gonna push back even again, since Bidlow's brother didn't even know himself. I mean, I don't see how, especially since we know the nature of his turn is very internal. So it's not like you see him having a mental projection.
One of the things I would say, if I was trying to rationalize it, she might know, it would be because in that montage, from episode 1, we see him get his power. He's in the park with her. And then he collapses on the ground when he's like, "Oh, I got these powers."
So she has a unique ability to remember the incident that most.
Well, I mean, just to say that she would know that. Oh, that was that day you collapsed. All these people that collapsed got powers that day. I don't know, maybe. Just saying, could be. But I got you. I don't think my theory depends on her knowing
I wouldn't say
that her
that.
brother is. I'm just. He seems clueless. That's all. So it's like. He could be like, I don't know, nobody knows what about me, but everybody knows. He could be that guy. This is Augie we're talking about. He is interested in penance, but then Lavinia quickly stumps their relationship. Is like, nope, our family name will not be besmirched by this person who's an outsider. And so he goes along with it. You know, he listens to his sister and like cuts off penance. And she's upset by it, obviously, as you would be. You can get rejected by somebody.
Sure. If you want to get into the whole discarding, plot lines or whatever, I don't have a problem with how quickly Mary Brighton left the show, but I think it's still possible that her influence, which is bringing everybody in, all the people at the end of the third episode, all these other touch people coming to the group. Could still have doesn't mean like she was wasted necessarily.
So her arc is kind of right through those first 3 episodes.
Yeah.
Mary Brighton is a member of the Touched. She was supposed to marry the inspector, left him at the altar. Her power is that she can sing a song that only people of the Touched can hear, and it fills them with joy, and it can basically bring them together.
And hope, I think, too.
And so she is kidnapped by Malady, who hears her song and is like, I think wants her to fix her, maybe? I don't know. But one of the things about Malady is she was headed off to an insane asylum at the moment she got her powers.
Yeah.
So she had some kind of a mental problem already, and this hasn't helped, I guess.
Yeah.
And so she kidnaps Mary Brighton. Amalia True and company rescue Mary. They're like, hey, now you can sing and bring us a bunch of folks. Mary Brighton for a while is like, I don't know if you guys are really, I should be singing for you.
Yeah.
Then she hears the terrible story of this fake orphanage where people are being lobotomized, and she's like, you know what? Okay, yeah, I think I'm on the right side now. So yes, I will sing for you. And
more dramatic than that, right? The mother who killed her own child,
right? Because she was touched, drowned her. Yeah. And so Penance creates this amplifier, and they go to the park. She sings, and it amplifies. And in the middle of singing, she gets gunned down by Gatling gun arm guy.
Yes,
I don't forget his name, but
he
is connected to Malady. But I think also, if I had to guess, if we're in this idea that Lavinia is the big bad, we know that earlier, Amalia went to Lavinia with this proof of this terrible orphanage and was showing, which Lavinia definitely knows about because she's been funding it. And in the middle of that conversation, she lets out like, oh yeah, and we're going to be in the park singing the stuff. So I think Lavinia organized this guy to get out of jail to go shoot.
Surely could be.
Mary is shot, but not before she sings her song. One thing really interesting about that scene, if you noticed, there's the character who she's in a lot, but she doesn't because she doesn't speak English, and we don't see a translation.
Oh yes,
we don't see Myrtle. I think is her name. Myrtle. Her power is she speaks all different types of languages, but she doesn't speak English, and we don't see what she's actually saying.
Mm-hmm.
But she's the only person in all the people listening to the song that has this really disturbed look on her face. It's really weird. And so if you think about, she is a person that theoretically understands different languages. Like she speaks all these different languages.
Right.
Maybe
it's possible that she also understands them. Yeah.
So maybe she understands the actual message behind that song and is like,
that's an interesting idea.
That's not good. Like maybe. I mean, we'd probably find that out right away. assuming she can communicate with somebody.
Nothing but horror.
Right. Come
is
to me and then shoot yourself in the face. So perhaps we get the idea that this song and what it actually means could be trouble for the touched, as opposed to like, yay, love and harmony and joy. Just a thought. Anyway, it was just interesting that she's like, I'm like,
Yeah,
why
that's
is she so
interesting.
upset? And then I was like, oh, well, she does have this language facility, so perhaps it's a thing.
That's interesting speculation there.
It was a cool fight. I think the guy's name is Odium, the Beggar King's hitman. The Beggar King is this guy who works sometimes with the touched and sometimes doesn't. He's like a free agent, essentially, and he kind of runs the crime in the area. And so, he runs afoul of the touched and decides, I guess, to send his hitman after Amalia. His big thing is he's a member of the touched in that he can resist water.
Yes.
And so Amalia, it's interesting, Amalia uses his powers against him, basically. I mean, I think...
Yes.
Because she goes underwater, he has to walk on top of it.
Right.
So he's following her around and trying to, like, smack her with a chain every time she comes up.
Yes.
But then she strangles him to death by using his power against him. She pulls him to the water, and the water is essentially like a concrete block under him because he can't go under, and so she just pulls him against the surface of the water until he dies. It was a pretty cool little the special effects on it were cool. And it was cool. Yeah. And she's obviously she's a very skilled fighter, and I feel like she does use the touched maybe powers against him. She knows how to do that, which is kind of a interesting ability of hers. It's still too early to tell like what this ship was, and are we talking aliens? Are we talking time travelers? Are we talking? I don't know, but who knows? But we'll hopefully. I don't know if this is a thing where we learn about this until. Is this like an end of the 6 episodes thing? Is it an end of the 12 episodes thing? Is it an end of a series thing? Yeah, we don't know. I would say this. My critique of the show, if I were to say, is I feel like it's doing too much world building too fast. Most series of this ilk, where they have a lot of world building to do, usually start small and then they build out. Harry Potter, oh, hey, look, I'm a kid, I'm an orphan, I live with my aunt and uncle. Oh, I'm going to this school, and then we get to see the world build through his eyes, and we're like, oh, now it's this huge world all of a sudden. Here, it just kind of starts at the macro level. Like, our characters already know way more than we do, and we're just trying to kind of pick up on the info. It's an interesting way to do it. It's you're in it, and there's info just coming at you, exposition like crazy in these first few episodes. I can understand more if this was a movie where you go, I got 2 hours, I got to tell this whole story. But that's the advantage of a TV show, is you can slow things down a little bit. And I feel like the show would benefit from a little slower. Instead of going at a 10, maybe you go at a 7.5. Just the best example.
I personally don't have the problem with the pacing.
Okay.
And I think that becomes more artful if you show effects and don't show things until afterwards. So while this might, even thinking to other series that Joss Whedon has done, I'm liking it more how things aren't spelled out as much. So,
Right.
For me, no, that's fine. Keep doing it. Shut up. Don't listen to him.
Well, an example I would give is episode 2, when it's Mason, I forgot how you pronounce it. He is talking to Hugo Swan. We haven't already talked about Hugo so much, but Hugo runs this private club, like a private sex club, essentially, where he employs the touched, and then he uses the club to blackmail the upper crust.
Yes.
And so there's this bit where Mason is like insulting him, basically, and he's like, your father, Alistair Swan, was a genius. And people say he went insane because your brother, Caleb, drowned. But I think it's because you didn't. And it's like, whoa, okay. So That's an info dump where we basically learned that Hugo had a brilliant dad who went crazy after his brother drowned,
preferred,
and he has survivor's guilt. And we learned in that same conversation that his father used to beat him. I'm just like, you could give some of that backstory in episode 3. I don't know. Like, it just felt like it felt a little too forced. It didn't feel real. It felt like we need to get this information out.
You wanted less. You wanted what 1 or 2 less facts in that?
Sure. Something that felt more like an actual conversation and less
to
like,
me,
I need to say this.
To me,
now.
it's hard to reconstruct it without delivering. And you could have decided to say, okay, well, leave the audience sort of curious as to the fact that Lord Masson revered or respected Hugo's father, and Hugo didn't feel that way.
I guess part of it's also the fact that he names them. Like, for instance, if you were talking to me and you're like, your dad, David Rice, he did stuff, and then your sister, Dana. I'm like, what? You could just say, like, it feels awkward. It feels like a script as opposed to, oh, we're just having a conversation and I'm angry at you or something. I don't know. It felt, that's all. There's some moments like that where it's like, okay, slow down. I don't know. I'm just.
I hear you.
It's not a deal breaker. It's just they're obviously trying to get this world set up fast, so that they can then play in it. I guess that's what I'm hoping. Eventually, you get past the set up everything, and then you're just, now we're playing in the world. You know all these people. You know Amalia and Penance and Lavinia and Augie and Dr. Haig and Bonfire and Malady and Dr. Cousins and the Beggar King and, Primrose, who's the big tall girl. Desiree, who's the woman that can make you talk extemporaneously, so they use her powers to be like, oh, let's get her in the area and then ask the inspector what he knows. And so anyway, I'm just saying there's a lot going on, and they have a lot of story to tell, so that's good on them. Yeah. But they're zipping through it. Actually, on that note, they dropping this idea that Hugo Swan, who's a pretty important character, I mean, he's in every episode. He seems to be I don't know, he's a tie between the Touched and the establishment.
Okay.
And he's got a deal now with Augie, where Augie's going to help fund the club. And we hear this thing that, his dad was his genius. I just wonder if he's maybe connected to the larger story, maybe. That maybe we'll end up meeting. It didn't say Alistair Swan died, is that he went crazy. Right. Maybe he's not crazy. Maybe he's a member of the Touched or something. I don't know. Another theory. I don't think it is in a theory. I think this is pretty. I think I can. If I was going to do a candy bet, I'd make it on this one, which is that Lord Masson. One of the reasons he's against the Touched so bad is that he claims that his daughter died the day that the ship put the spores out. His daughter was hit by a spore.
Yes.
He doesn't know about the ship, but she died on this particular day, according to him. But episode 3. We see they're laying a telephone cable, I think, or something like that, wires in his house.
Yes.
And the guy comes to a door in the basement, and there's a growling behind the door. Like, that's his daughter. His daughter ain't dead. He's upset because his daughter was changed into some werewolf. I don't know. Who knows what the thing is, but I think he has a daughter who is a member of the Touched.
That could be
my thought. And he just faked her death because it was like, I can't deal with the social stigma that this makes. So,
which it'd be interesting if he stays an antagonist towards all of them. They probably will have it be a lot more tragic than it already is for him if they do intend for him not to make some sort of
like a turn. Like, for instance, if they could prove to him that they could help his daughter.
Right.
Maybe he's like,
exactly.
oh, wow.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes as well. But those are my big points. I like the show. It does have it's got a cool sci-fi premise. I wouldn't call it steampunk because it's not really steam-powered, but it's Victorian-era alternate with a technological twist to it.
Sure.
And it's on HBO, so it's got some funding behind it, and it's got some compelling characters. So I'm on board.
Yeah. I'm enjoying it.
So, cool. All right, we'll be back talking about episode 4. So, yeah, we'll just do episode 4, 5, and 6. And then right around that time is when the Loki series begins as well. So we'll pick right up with that. So, thank you. As always, Paul, good to talk to you, sir.
Yes, good to talk to you.
And we'll talk again soon. Bye, everybody.
Bye.